Sometimes you just want to play a game for the action without thinking about complex stories or dealing with boring gameplay mechanics, which is why in this video we're taking a look at the top 5 free action games on Steam you don't know about, plus a few bonuses.
Games are in no particular order.
Undefeated is a superhero game where you fly around the city saving people with your powers and completing a variety of missions. There are 3 different events that can occur in the open world. A fire, where you press a button to save a person. Rubble debris, where you press a button to save a person. And terrorists. Fight group of easily defeated bad guys. You have basic melee and ranged attacks, as well as a ground slam. The game is really easy since every fight can be beaten with button mashing, but it's still fun to watch. There's also mission types where you have to destroy enemy structures within a given time limit, and flying through ring missions where you, fly through rings within a time limit. The boss fights are also pretty simple and repetitive, but way better than fighting the standard enemies.
Macaroni. Chicken strips.
You have to try and keep close to them to hit them with your ranged attack, but not get too close so that they'll fly away from you. You can restore health back to the city by attacking their attack, cause I guess that's how superpowers work. Look, it's not a hard or complex game, but the spectacle of playing as a superhero was really entertaining for about an hour. Flying around the city and wreaking havoc on the weak enemies was really fun to watch, so if you like games that make you feel like a superhero, then I recommend Undefeated. Red Hot Vengeance is a top-down shooter similar to games like Hotline Miami, but with a minimalist graphical style. The levels are linear but open, which allows you to come at the level in several different ways. Unlike Hotline Miami, you have a health bar, which makes the game more forgiving.
I found that motherfucker.
You're able to shoot through doors as well, which is great for ambushing unaware enemies.
Surprise, motherfucker!
There's a good amount of weapon types, but the shotguns are too overpowered, so every time I found one I would just use that for the rest of the level. The story was good, but brought down by the non-emotive voice acting. Like, why are you monotone talking about killing someone while saving a little girl? Normally I'm the monotone one.
I was willing to do just about anything. Fuck, I killed an 18-year-old kid with a pipe wrench. But I draw the line at women and children.
The art style during the storyboard-like cutscenes looked like something out of an edgy middle schooler's art book, which was kinda weird. The game's audio also bugged out a few times and turned parts of itself or all of itself down.
Hands behind your head. Ah.
The soundtrack was pretty fire though when I could hear it. The beginning levels were really easy as long as you hug doorways or corners. The harder levels were the ones that were more open, so prioritizing which enemies to kill became a necessity. Apart from the weapon an enemy has, they don't have any unique behavioral traits, which would have been nice to see. Despite those few minor complaints, Red Hot Vengeance is a very polished and an engaging action-packed time. And if you're left wanting more after the hour-long campaign, there's also a bunch of shorter challenge levels to play through as well as a new game plus. The level design and core shooting mechanics of this game make it worth playing, so if you like top-down shooters then I recommend Red Hot Vengeance. Starfetchers is a gritty 90s themed sword combat game where you slice your way through enemies in a crime-ridden world. The protagonist of the game is this guy named Sanyati, who's fed up with his job and feels trapped in this scum-filled city. While he's working, a car crashes into the store and 2 guys want to rob it. Then this girl who's part of a gang called the Thorns kills them and ropes you into joining her gang. From then on, you fight your way through various gangs in the city to try and put the Thorns on top. You do this by going through linear levels, killing the enemies within. The combat is really unique. You have a sword you aim with your mouse, which kills enemies in 1 hit. You can deflect bullets and swords with it, but you have to be careful since you also die in 1 hit. Along with your sword, you also have a kick ability which knocks down enemies and launches you upwards. You can also slow down time temporarily to make dodging and hitting enemies easier. The game's soundtrack fits the world and action super well with its retro synth slappers. It's some of the best video game music I've heard because I love the genre, especially paired with the gritty, corrupt world you're playing in. The story and world building was actually a large focus of the game and showing how corrupt the city actually is. The dialogue is really well written, and every character brings a unique worldview that shapes Sanyati's opinion of the world he's living in. So if you like games with unique gameplay, gritty worlds, and amazing soundtracks, then I recommend Starfetchers. Swarm is a boss fight game where your goal is to defeat just one challenging boss. You do this by switching between two different attack modes, melee and top-down shooter mode. In melee mode, you dodge the boss's attacks and attack him with your slash attack. In top-down shooter mode, you have to avoid the boss's attacks while shooting at him. You can switch between these two modes after a short cooldown, which is necessary to both dealing damage and avoiding attacks. The boss will create eggs that hatch and spawn in smaller wasp enemies that lock onto you, giving you even more attacks to avoid. You can only break the eggs in melee mode, which means you're constantly switching between modes to destroy the eggs. You don't have a lot of health but can refill some of it if you destroy the green eggs in time. The music in this game is this upbeat synth soundtrack that fits the neon action really well. Even though you repeat the fight a lot since you die over and over again, I never got frustrated because the music was so good and I was constantly improving at the fight. Every phase introduces a new challenge and the soundtrack gets increasingly intense. The challenging boss, intense synth soundtrack, and polished gameplay made me play this game until I finally beat the boss. If you like boss rush style games or games with an amazing soundtrack, then I recommend Swarm. Loop Loop DX. Loop Loop DX is a twin-stick shooter where you play as this criminal triangle named Carl who's trying to escape a prison called Prism. Get it? 'Cause shapes? It follows retro video game conventions in that if you go off one side of the screen, you pop out on the other side, similar to asteroids. The same thing happens with your bullets, and that's the solution to the light puzzles that require you to hit yourself with one of your own bullets. You go through the game's unique zones that each add a new element to the gameplay. Then at the end of every zone, you fight an interesting boss that fits the theme of that zone. The boss fights were my favorite part of the game because each one has a great design and unique attacks to figure out. They're not very challenging, but it's satisfying to learn their patterns. After beating a zone, you're able to upgrade yourself with the money you've acquired to get buffs like more health and increased fire rate, for example. The game's soundtrack is really good with a modern upbeat chiptune soundtrack that both heightens the action and adds to the charm of the world. It's a really creative game with some well-written characters. It kinda reminded me of the game Just Shapes and Beats because of the art style, great soundtrack, and uniquely designed characters and boss fights. If you like twin-stick shooters or short and sweet games sitting at about 30 minutes, then I recommend Loop Loop DX. Today is your lucky day because I've got 2 bonus games! Rogue Reaper is an action platformer taking place at the end of the Dark Ages during the rise of the Plague. You're able to jump and dash around levels and use telekinesis that allows you to pick up and throw objects at enemies. Stupid rat. It's a really easy game since the enemies are pretty stupid and can be avoided really easily, but you can upgrade yourself with abilities to make the game even easier. The game's graphics, though simple, were charmingly dark in their minimalist look. If you're looking for a simple game with a lot of charm, then I recommend Rogue Reaper. Archipelago is a platforming game all about fluid movement. For some reason, this game either wouldn't record or ran at like 15 frames per second when I did record, which is why the footage looks crappy. You have to look for enemies and orbs while you're in the air, since dashing through those doesn't cost you your dash charge. It's really easy, but the movement was satisfying enough. The game only takes 5 minutes to beat, but if you like beautiful chill games, then I recommend Archipelago. Those were the top 5 free action games on Steam you didn't know about. If you're looking for more free Steam games you don't know about, I'll have my free Steam games playlist linked in the description down below.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up with this ongoing series.
Ow.